It's kind of weird that, we might know somebody, but then the first time we walk in on them or get in their car and hear them listening to a certain style of music, we automatically just label them as that being their favorite style of music, whether it's hip hop, whether it's pop, whether it's rock, whatever it is, Christian music, doesn't matter. And I think that's just kind of naturally where mine goes. But that's not always the end all be all. We can all love different genres, and you never know where our roots are. And it was never more evident than with the guys that we're going to talk about today, and that is the Beastie Boys. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, music lovers, especially my rock music lovers. That's right, welcome back for another one. This one's going to be pretty cool because honestly, growing up, I heard the Beastie Boys quite often. One of my uncle's favorite artists, and he's a huge rock fan. But he loved the Beastie Boys. Well, he loved a lot of different artists. He loved Run DMC. He loved LL Cool J. I mean, he loved a lot of different hip-hop groups or artists. And the 1980s was prime for hip-hop. That was when it was finally starting to grow and get the recognition that it honestly deserved. You think about the Beastie Boys. They were really the first white hip-hop artist or artists, because they were a group, to gain substantial success in the hip-hop world. And then you also had Run DMC working with Aerosmith in 1986 with the collaboration doing Walk This Way. And that was huge to bring the two worlds together and show that this wall that was there could be broken down and we could all live together in harmony in the music world. And the video for that showed it, because it was obviously Aerosmith on one side of the building, Run DMC on the other, and they break that wall down, literally and figuratively. So that was huge. 1980s were huge for hip-hop. And I don't think hip-hop would be where it's at today. At least we don't know. But that was where it started to change. And honestly, it probably would have changed somewhere. But obviously in our history books, that is where it changed. And the Beastie Boys were huge in that change, that transition into this new music that was more set to provide to this urban culture of people that didn't really have a music to fall back on and call their own. Well, they did now, and it was badass at that, and obviously it's evolved a lot since then. But all those artists that came out of that genre, that era in the 1980s, you got to give them their respect. The Beastie Boys were a huge part of that. But a lot of people don't realize this. As big as they were in the hip-hop world, they actually made that transition from another world. Beastie Boys growing up from Brooklyn in New York City, they had a different first love when it came to music. That is what we're going to talk about today. With the Beastie Boys coming into the masses, you really have to go back and thank Def Jam. I mean, Def Jam was huge, and honestly, it's still today. I mean, 40 years it's been around. You got big artists on the Def Jam roster. You got DJ Khaled, 2 Chainz, you even got Justin Bieber. And a lot of people don't realize that. There's a lot of artists still working with Def Jam. But they started back in 1984 with their founders, Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin, one of the greatest music producers of all time. Russell Simmons has created a legacy of his own. Those two guys started something that was going to be legendary, whether they knew it at the time or not. And bringing on the Beastie Boys was a huge, huge part of that and their success going forward. Because on November 15th, 1986, that's when Beastie Boys released their License to Ill record. And this was huge. It was the first hip-hop record to top the Billboard 200 charts. I mean, well, beyond the Billboard 200. But that was a huge album. Huge for the Beastie Boys, huge for Def Jam, huge for the hip-hop world. And obviously showing that it didn't matter what you looked like. If you could do hip-hop and you enjoyed it and you could bring it to people and have them enjoy it as well, didn't matter what you look like. The Beastie Boys proved that. But you really got to go back before that. That was their huge mainstream success, their breakout. That's when they finally realized this is what we do. This is what we got to do. This is what we're good at. This is what the people like. And this is what's going to stamp our legacy. But really the guys, they were very much rooted into the punk rock world. And even when they got big with their hip hop, success, a lot of their live shows, you will see the Beastie Boys. They'll jump on the drums, they'll jump on the guitar, and they'll sing a little something that you weren't expecting, especially if you were going there to see a hip hop show. So them and their punk rock roots, I think, really helped them with what they got into when they jumped into the hip hop world. So the Beastie Boys started out in 1981 in New York City by way of Brooklyn. The Beastie Boys name actually was an acronym when they initially started out as a hardcore punk band. Beastie standing for Boys Entertaining Anarchistic States Towards Inner Excellence. Now, this acronym eventually was an afterthought once the guys blew up in the hip-hop world. But it didn't matter. That's a cool thing to know because I had no idea about that till I did a little bit of research. So the guys definitely came up with a name that was perfect for that punk rock world and what it stood for. And they got that by basically being influenced by a lot of bands they would go see at CBGB in New York City, like the Misfits, the Dead Kennedys, Reagan Youth. I mean, they definitely had a huge love for the punk rock world, and I can relate to that because it's such a tight community. I mean, that's where I kind of grew up with my first involvement heavily into music, was the punk rock world. The type of people I was around, the type of, togetherness we had when we were at the shows, even when we weren't there, just as a group doing things, we were together and we were bonded by that punk music. So I completely understand why the Beastie Boys fell into that world, and especially in New York City in the 80s. I mean, it was huge. If you were able to go to CBGB in the 80s, man, I would love to take a time machine back there just for maybe 10 minutes. Didn't matter what band. The Ramones or the Misfits, Dead Kennedys would be a good choice. But any band, I'd love to just walk in that door and see somebody at CBGB in the 80s and just get that feeling, that environment. I could only imagine what it was like. And I'm sure for the Beastie Boys, it was huge, which is why it influenced them so much. So the Beastie Boys released their first EP in 1982, Pollywog Stew. Now this was an 8-track EP. It was 8 tracks and it lasted 10 minutes and 43 seconds. That's kind of what punk rock was at that time. You could fit 15 songs on an album and get through each song in a minute, 10 seconds, maybe a minute 30 at the most. The Ramones were a perfect example of that. And that's exactly what these guys did. They were modeling themselves after what they were hearing and what they knew. Now, they released that through Rat Cage, which was an independent record label there in New York City. But you go back and listen to this album, a perfect example is their song Transit Cop. In 1983, the Beastie Boys did something that would pretty much pave the way for their future and their legacy. They had made a prank phone call to Carvel Ice Cream, which was a franchise in New York City. And on this prank phone call, they recorded it, they came up with their own beat, and they put it on as a track. Now this track pretty much revolutionized their future. And if you go back and listen to it, it's amazing to know that this is where it all started for the Beastie Boys in their hip-hop roots and their hip-hop legacy moving forward. And it was the track Cookie Puss.
Cookie Puss, man. No, nobody here but that name. Cookie or Puss, man. Cookie chick, anybody, man. I want to speak to them. They're not here.
Researching their roots from the punk rock world, they don't talk about it a lot, but you can find stuff out there. Most of it talks about their hip-hop legacy, but there's a lot of stuff out there about the Beastie Boys' roots, especially in this. And there's a lot of videos you can go out there and watch. But knowing that Cookie Puss was the beginning for them, they had these hardcore punk roots, they loved it, and they never let it go throughout their career. But hearing that the first time, and seeing everything that people wrote about that all throughout the internet, how they loved it, they played it when they were in college, they played it on the radio in New York City, and I was like, man, I listened to it and I was like, there's not a lot there. But if you really dig deep and listen to what their beats, what they're coming up with on the drums, what they're coming up with their sampling, everything that they're coming up with on that, just to do that track, even though there's not a lot of vocals there, it's amazing. And that's how you understand the way hip-hop was going, what these guys did to say, hey, we can do this thing too. It was actually a bit of genius on Cookie Puss. And honestly, I look back now and I'm like, you know what? It meant a lot to a lot of people, because if you go out there and read about what people say about it, it was huge. It was huge in the direction they were going, and it really helped them step into that door of the hip-hop world. And when they eventually met Rick Rubin, it was all history after that. There was nothing left to do but make history, and that's exactly what the Beastie Boys did. If you go out there and ask anybody right now, what do they think about the Beastie Boys, or what's the first thing that comes to their mind? It's going to be their legacy in hip-hop, no doubt, and rightly so, because these guys paved an amazing road. Would we have got Vanilla Ice? Would we have ever got Eminem? Who knows? I'm from Houston. Paul Wall, one of the most iconic guys in that city. Dude is awesome. Met him a few times. Down to earth as F. But, when it comes to white rappers, whether it's male or female in the hip hop world, it's not too unusual now. Maybe it's not as common, but it doesn't seem awkward if you see somebody go out there and lay something down that just hits hard. You don't think twice about the color of their skin, and you shouldn't. It's no different from seeing an African American or somebody from the Orient in the rock world, even from Mexico, wherever they're from. It doesn't matter. If you go out there and you do the music justice, it does not matter what the hell you look like. I mean, it's just crazy. And the people that still see color, it's unfortunate. And it is what it is. I mean, to label somebody right away by looking at the color of their skin just shows how ignorant you are. But it doesn't matter. When it comes to the art of music, if you have a passion for whatever genre it is and you do it well and you do it justice, that's all that matters. And that's what the Beastie Boys did to the hip-hop world. And they obviously had a huge passion for it. It's not like it wasn't there. It's not like if we don't do punk rock music, we're not going to be happy in the music industry. They were happy, man. They paved a legacy that's going to go on for centuries, forever. In 1,000 years, when people go look at the archives of hip-hop and the Beastie Boys pop up and they look at it, these guys, and they listen to it, they're going to know that these guys did something badass. And that's another thing. I would have loved to have been there when the Beastie Boys were in their prime in New York City, just coming out to see people's reaction. I bet it was amazing. But they never let go of their punk rock roots. And that's something we can all relate to if you're a punk rock music fan. You can listen to hip hop. You can listen to country. You can listen to jazz. Doesn't matter. We can like any kind of music we want. But there might be one or two out there that just resonate with us more than others. That's just the way music works. But anyway, Beastie Boys, forever engraved in the world of hip hop. But don't forget, they were hardcore punk rockers too. Till next time, go out there, take care of your friends and family. Do something amazing. You know, go for something. Doesn't matter what people think. Doesn't matter what you look like. Don't let nobody judge you. If you want to do it, go out there and freaking do it. Till next time, take care of yourself. I'm out.